Bismillahir Rahmanir Rahim. So continuing with the intermediate Hanafi fiqh of the work called Ahkam al-Sharia. So not only are we learning some of the actual rulings, we're also learning from the structure of this book how people ask questions and how the answers are formulated. So in the next few lessons now, or rather the next few fatawa that we cover from this book, you're going to see a little bit more of a pattern. So we're going to get into this thing right now. All right, so this is the next issue, changing your intention mid-prayer. This is a thing sometimes people encounter, that they will start the prayer with an intention and then they'll be like, no, 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 wait, that's not the prayer I wanted to pray. I want to pray something else. So can you do this? That's the question. So let's look at the specific question that was asked. All right, this is the question here. What do the ulama say about the following situation? A person stood up to perform the Dhuhr prayer after praying the four sunan, but forgetfully made his intention to pray for sunan again when he was supposed to pray 4 units of Farḍ. After finishing the first 2 units, he remembered that he was supposed to pray Farḍ and then switched his intention in his heart, completing the remaining 2 units with his new intention and reciting only Surah Al-Fatiha in them. Okay, so what did he do? He already prayed 4 Sunnat of Fajr. Four Sunnat of Dhuhr. Then he stood up. He was supposed to pray Farḍ, but he made intention for Sunnat again, forgetfully. He forgot. Then in the middle of the prayer, after the second unit, he realized, oh man, I'm supposed to be doing Farḍ. So then he switched his intention and then he completed the 4 units that he started and he only recited Surah Al-Fatiha in the last 2 units because he said, I was supposed to do Farḍ for this. So in this situation, will his prayer be considered a Sunnah or will it be considered Farḍ? Will he have, after the prayer is done, he did these 4 units and he switched his intention in the middle. Is it going to be a sunnah prayer or a fard prayer? And then the questioner, he gives this nice little line here that a lot of people give. Bayyinu wa tu'ajjiru means give clarity on this issue and find the reward with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Okay, a lot of people who make istifta, a lot of people who make questions to send to the mufti to give the ifta, to get the answer, they make this thing. It's almost like a dua for them. Like, if please answer this question for me, and Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will repay this favor. All right, so what's the answer to this? He said that this prayer will be neither fard nor sunnah. So the question was, is it going to be fard or sunnah? It's going to be neither. It will not be considered fard because the first 2 units were performed without an intention for fard. And intentions made after having performed an action have no consideration. The intention has to be before you do the deed, not after. So he's already completed a few deeds, right? It's 4 units of prayer. He already completed 2 units. So you're supposed to do 4 units of fard. But you made an intention after completing the first 2 units and then you finished 2 more. So the whole prayer is going to be nothing. It's not going to be fard, that's for sure. Okay, now he quotes from a very, very important book of Hanafi fiqh, Al-Durr al-Mukhtār. So something important is the works of Hanafi fiqh. There are the literature for Hanafi fiqh just for this one madhab. The literature that's written on this fiqh, it outnumbers in quantity all of the other works of all of the 3 madhabs put together, the other 3 madhabs. So you have the literature in the Shafi'i school, you have the literature produced in the Maliki school, you have the literature produced in the Hanbali school. All of this literature is if you or to combine all the works of literature on these three madhabs, it would still not surpass in quantity the number of works that have been written on the Hanafi madhab. But therein lies a little bit of a problem for Hanafis, because which book do you use? And sometimes, for reasons I will get into in the next few lessons, sometimes the different books have different positions on the same issue. So now what do you do? I'll give you an example. So some books say that if you force water into your ears, you're fasting, your fast is going to break. And some people say if you force water into your ears, your fast won't break. This is within the Hanafi method. So which position do you follow? This is an entire extra addition to the science of the Hanafi madhab that the experts of the madhab know. But one of the solutions that the expert fuqaha of not too far in the past, but along enough in the past, before the whole new world order of World War I, what they did was they compiled books to the best of their ability and knowledge that had the mu'tamad positions. So there's some positions in the madhab that are reliable, and there's some positions that are not reliable. So one of the very important works that uh, compiled what were, according to the author, the reliable positions, according to the author's knowledge and understanding. It was the author of this book, Durr al-Mukhtār, al-Durr al-Mukhtār. Okay, the author of this book is named Alauddin al-Haskafi. So Imam al-Haskafi, he writes in Durr al-Mukhtār. So you see here, now you'll have to follow along with difficulty. Some of you guys might know what this says, and some of you might not know. That's okay. But you see how this is in brackets here, and then you see this is not in brackets. What's not in brackets, this is like the whole book. This is actually Durr al-Mukhtār. And this, because Durr al-Mukhtār is a commentary of a base of another book. And this is the original book here that's in the brackets, which is called Tanweerul Absar, which is by Imam Tamartashi. So Imam Haskafi, he made a commentary to this book to show the reliable positions of the madhab. Okay, so this is a very important book. It's going to be quoted from all the time, even to this day. For the majority of the positions of the madhab, we have recourse. The average faqih has recourse to this book. So he says, Fit Durr al-Mukhtār, it's written in Durr al-Mukhtār, ولا عبرة بنية متأخرة عنها على المذهب. He says there is no consideration for any intention that was delayed from an action according to this madhab of the Hanafiyyah. All right. Now, back to the issue at hand. Concerning the latter two units, if the intention for Farḍ was made at the first takbīr of the third raka'at while standing, then the intention itself is null. If it was not made for that first takbīr, then the intention itself is completely null. If the person had prayed a full 4 units after making his intention, the Farḍ would have been complete. However, he kept it limited to 2 after switching his intention. Therefore, the Farḍ was not adequately performed. Because if you're praying Farḍ, you have to pray 4 units of Farḍ with that intention. He prayed 2 units with one intention and then 2 units with another intention. But you're supposed to pray 4 of Farḍ, but you only prayed basically 2 of Farḍ. Okay? So what's this first point mean? He means, what's the first takbir of the third rakat? Is when you are moving into ruku'. Okay? So if you make your intention when you're standing at the third rakat, then technically this niyat can be useful. How? because of the second point. Like if this person had, let's say, he prayed two and then he's like, oh man, I was supposed to do Farḍ. He stood up for the third one, changed his niyat, and then prayed a full four properly. Then technically his Farḍ would have been complete. He would have just prayed Sajdatul Sahw. But that's not what he did. And after the third rak'at, he went into ruku. After that, there is no niyat because there can't be one single unit of prayer performed by itself. We don't accept that in the Hanafi madhab. You have to have a minimum of two. Okay? So suffice it to say, he only did 2 units with that intention, and that's not enough. So it's not good. This 4 units that he prayed, it can't be Farḍ. Again, he's quoting from Durr al-Mukhtār. وَيَفْسُدُهَا انتقاله من صلاة إلى مغايرتها. Okay? So moving, okay, from one namaz to a different namaz is going to break that first namaz. Okay? Once again, you're praying one prayer and then immediately you move to the another prayer. That's going to break your namaz. Okay? Which is exactly what he did. And then he quotes this book here. This is another very, very important book. This is called Radd al-Muḥtār. This itself is a commentary to Durr al-Mukhtār. So, Radd al-Muḥtār, this is written by Imam Ibn Abidin Shami. And what he did was he studied Durr al-Mukhtār in detail. And he traced all of the research done by Imam Haskafi. Okay? And what he did was he corrected a few of the positions of Imam Haskafi. And he explained some of the positions as well. So he explains something here. Okay? He says, what does this mean? Moving from one namaz to another. He says, بِأَنْ يَنْوِيَ بِقَلْبِهِ مَعَ التَّكْبِيرَةِ الْإِنْتِقَالِ الْمَذْكُورِ. Okay? So he says, how do you move from one namaz to another? When you are intending with your heart, when you make a takbir, okay, of to move to something to what you're mentioning, right? Like for example, what you're moving, let's say you're standing, okay, and then you make a takbir to move. Like takbirul intiqal is what? Is when you say Allahu Akbar, you go into ruku, Allahu Akbar, you go into sajda, Allahu Akbar, you stand back up. These are called the takbirs of intiqal, takbirs of movement. So you're doing a takbir of movement, but you're intending to move not just physically, but you're intending to go to a different prayer. Okay? Which is exactly what this person ended up doing in the question. Then he says, Qala fin nahr. He's quoting another famous book, which is An-Nahr al-Fa'iq. Okay? Which is a commentary of Kanzut Daqaiq. If you know, you know. Don't worry about it if you don't know if you can't keep up with the details, it's fine. Okay? So he explains this from this other person's words. بِأَنْ صَلَّى رَكَعَةً مِنَ الظُّهْرِ مَثْلًا ثُمَّ افتتح العصر أو التطوع بتكبيرة. So the person is praying, he prayed 1 unit of Dhuhr namaz, for example. Okay? And then he started Asr namaz or he started Nafil namaz with the takbir. Like he did a takbir, okay, and moved straight to Asr namaz, or he moved straight to what? Nafil namaz, some other namaz, okay? فَإِنْ كَانَ صَاحِبَ تَرْتِيبٍ. If he is sahib tartib is somebody who doesn't have any qaza namazes. Okay? He says, كَانَ شَارِعًا فِي التَّطَوُّعِ عِنْدَهُمَا خِلَافًا لِمُحَمَّدٍ. According to Shaykhain. Shaykhain means Imam Abu Hanifa and Imam Abu Yusuf. According to them, this person will be considered to have started the Nafil namaz. خِلَافًا لِمُحَمَّدٍ. As opposed to Imam Muhammad, who is also a student of Imam Abu Hanifa, he didn't agree with this position. He had a different position. He said no. وإن لم يكن بأن سقط للضيق أو للكثرة صح شروعه في العصر. And uh, if it didn't happen that the namaz dropped because of like the shortness of the time, um, or the lengthiness of it, صح شروعه في العصر, then his beginning of Asr namaz is valid. لأنه نوى تحصيل ما ليس بحاصل, because he's intending something, he's intending to get something that he doesn't have, which is what? The namaz of Asr. He doesn't have namaz of Asr, he didn't do it. So he's intending to do it. That's a valid intention. فخرج عن الأول. So that means he will be exiting from the first one. فمناط الخروج عن الأول صحة الشروع في المغاير ولو من وجه. So the basic foundation of moving from the first namaz is the validity of the start in the other namaz. So how valid is it? Okay, so for example, let's say so this example that he gives here, you started the Zuhr namaz, okay? And let's say like after finishing one unit of Zuhr namaz, you switch to Asr namaz. Okay? What's going to happen? Starting your Asr namaz will be valid. If the namaz of Zuhr no longer exists because of like the shortness of time. Let's say you started Zuhr namaz and while you were praying Zuhr namaz, Asr namaz started. So if you switch straight to Asr namaz, that is a valid intention. So if there is not time for Asr namaz yet and you do that, that's not a valid intention. It's not going to work. But if the intention is valid, then yes, you can shift to another namaz like this. But the previous namaz will be invalidated.
That's only if you're praying the four farz of Zohar and you're like halfway in between and the time enters.
Yeah, something like this. Or like he said, you only prayed one unit and the time entered.
Oh, cool. Well, wouldn't that fulfill the farz of Zohar then?
No, because you didn't finish it.
Okay.
Right? Like he said before, you need to do 4 units. You didn't do 4 units. You only did 1 or 2 units. So the prayer will, so that's why it won't be Farḍ, because you only did 2 units of Farḍ and you're supposed to pray 4. The prayer will not count as Sunnah either, because he's already performed 4 units of Sunnah. In the original question, he had already done his 4 units of Sunnah. So you can't do Sunnah again. You already did it. Once you did a prayer, it's done. In the case that he had not done, let's say he didn't do the 4 Sunnahs, it still wouldn't count as a Sunnah prayer, this thing that he did, because he switched his intention in the middle of the prayer. Okay? Regardless of whether he switched at the first takbir of the 3rd unit or in another unit. Because again, those sunnah units also need to be 4. He switched his intention. So it's not going to be sunnah either. So the 2 units that were prayed prior to the switch will be considered nafil. Okay? So he did 4 units, but he switched his intention. So he said that this whole prayer is neither fard nor sunnah. The last 2 units, he had an intention of fard. They were supposed to be fard, but they're now batil because he didn't finish the 2 more units that he needed. And the previous 2, they're not sunnah because number 1, you need to do 4 units of sunnah. Number 2, you already did the sunnah. So what's going to happen to these 2 units that he already prayed? It's going to be considered just a nafil for him. Wallahu ta'ala a'lamu bis-sawab. Next issue. Reciting a surah in the last 2 units of fard. This one is a little less complicated. This is what happens. What happens, like, we know this from Fardulum, that the wajib part of namaz is in your fard prayer of 3 or more units. The first 2 units, you're supposed to recite Suratul Fatiha and then another surah. And then in the units after the first 2, what do? You're supposed to just recite what?
Just the Fatiha.
Just Surah Al-Fatiha. So what happens when you're praying a Fard prayer? You've already prayed the first two units. You already did your Fatiha and your Surah. But then in the next units after that, you do Fatiha, what you're supposed to do, but then you add a Surah. What do you do then? This is the question. What do the ulama say about the following issue? During a Fard prayer, someone forgetfully recited a Surah after Surah Al-Fatiha in both the latter two units and then ended the prayer with salam. Will his prayer be considered fard or sunnah? If he performed the prostration of forgetfulness, which we know, sajdat al-Sahw. If he did sajda sahw, will his fard prayer be complete? What's the answer? He says his fard prayer is complete and there is no issue in his prayer. There's actually no problem with what he did. No sajda sahw is due either. In fact, even if you were to have purposely recited a surah in each of the latter two units, there would be no major issue because it's just khilafe awla. Khilafe awla means you're doing something that's not the 100% preferred thing. So there's different grades of actions that you're supposed to do. So there's fard, there's wajib, there's sunnah, right? There's mustahab slash mandub, there's jaiz, right? And then there's grades of actions that you're not supposed to do, like haram, like makruh tahrimi, like makruh tanzihi, like isa'a, right? And the lowest grade of things you're not supposed to do is khilafe awla. Khilafe awla means there was something better that you could have done, but you didn't do it. There's no real problem with doing khilaf awla. You didn't do anything wrong. You just didn't do the thing that was better in the situation, right? So there's like a 90% good thing and a 100% good thing. You just did the 90% thing. You didn't do what was 100% when it was in front of you. That's all you did. You didn't do anything wrong here. So he says the question is he forgetfully added a surah to Surah Al-Fatiha in the latter two units. Sayyidi Al-Azad said even if he did it on purpose, it wouldn't be a problem. So you don't have to do sajda sahu. Sajda sahu is only if you mess up on a wajib, right? In fact, some authorities have said that adding a surah in the latter two units is mustahab. So some people said, yeah, it's just khilaf awla, but some people said the opposite. Some people said, no, it's not even like a non-bad kind of bad thing. It's actually a good thing. Mustahab means recommended. So some people say that it's recommended to add a surah to Surah Al-Fatiha in the latter two units of your Fard prayer. But he says, according to my findings in this matter, this istihbab, this recommendation is with respect to the person praying alone. It's only mustahab if you do this when you're praying alone. It is makruh for the imam to do this. And if it makes the prayer hard on the followers, then it is haram. That one of the responsibilities of the imam is he's supposed to keep the prayer easy for everybody. Yassiru wa la tu'assiru. We talked about this hadith last week. Make things easy, don't make things hard. وَبَشِّرُوا وَلَا تُنَفِّرُوا. Give good tidings and don't cause hatred. Right? So, uh, for the imam to do this, it's because it's lengthening the prayer. And you don't want the prayer lengthened for the followers at all. So because you lengthen the prayer a little bit more than was necessary, it's makruh. And if you lengthened it so much that you added lengthy surahs and the people were there longer, this is actually haram. So if you're praying alone by yourself, you're not responsible for anybody else, then in your fard prayer, it's mustahab to add surahs in the latter two units. Okay? Again, he's quoting from Al-Durr al-Mukhtār. He says, وَلَهَا واجبات. The prayer has wajib components. وَهِيَ ضَمُّ سُورَةٍ فِي الْأُولَيَيْنِ. And they are including the addition of a surah in the first two units min al-fard, of the fard prayer. وَهَلْ يُكْرَهُ فِي الْأُخْرَيَيْنِ الْمُخْتَارِ لَا. Is it makruh to add a surah in the latter two units? He says, The chosen position is that it's not. And then Radd al-Muḥtār is clarifying this thing further. أي لا يكره تحريما بل تنزيها لأنه خلاف السنة. قال في المنية وشرحها فإن ضم السورة إلى الفاتحة ساهيا يجب عليه سجدة السهو في قول أبي يوسف لتأخير الركوع عن محله وفي أظهر الروايات لا يجب لأن القراءة فيهما مشروعة من غير التقدير والاقتصار على الفاتحة مسنون لا واجب. وفي البحر عن فخر الإسلام أن السورة مشروعة في الأخريين نقلا وفي الذخيرة أنه المختار وفي المحيط وهو الأصح والظاهر أن المراد بقوله نفلا آه، الجواز ومشروعية والمشروعية بمعنى عدم الحرمة فلا ينافي كونه خلاف الأولى كما أفاده في الحلية. So this is a long-winded thing that he's saying that some of the fuqaha they said that it's fine because لأن القراءة فيها مشروعة من غير تقدير because قراءة within the namaz this is something that's part of the law. It's something that has been legislated without any particular setting. And limiting the qira'at to Fatiha, this is just a sunnah. It's not wajib. That's what some people said. But we know that so continuing, he says that the adding the surah in the latter two units, this is just nafil. Okay, that's why it's a chosen position according to some people. And some people say that, and it's pretty obvious that the intent behind the word nafal is just jawaz, just permissible. And the mashru'iyah, the fact that it's present in the law, that it's been something that exists there, this means that this just means that it's not haram. So this is why you can still say that this is khilaf awla. Okay. Now, here is where Sayyidi al-Hazrat is a very, very lengthy discussion. This much that I've explained is already very complicated for the people coming off of Farḍ. It's not 100% necessary for you to understand all these extra technical things. But Sayyidi al-Hazrat goes for like about a page and a half explaining this point of Radd al-Muḥtār and how he shows that it's mustahab to add a surah to Surah al-Fatiha in the latter two rakats of Farḍ only if you're praying alone, not if you're praying as an imam. Okay? Wallahu ta'ala a'lamu bis-sawab. Let's move on to the next issue. Consuming animals shot with rifles. Now we're switching to something completely different now. Okay? Last two units, last two subjects, you thought, okay, we're just going to talk about namaz today. Nope. We're switching straight to eating animals shot with rifles. So you know that hunting way back before, it used to be with a bow and arrows, right? This is pretty much, it's pretty safe to say this is now all but completely defunct and completely outdated. Nowadays, when people hunt, they hunt with hunting rifles. Okay? Now, there's a difference between shooting something with a bow, an arrow, shooting something with an arrow, and shooting something with a bullet. And the fuqaha have made differences. So, the rules for hunting are that if you shoot something with an arrow and the animal dies, you can eat it. And if you shoot something with an arrow and the animal doesn't die, then you have to slaughter it. Okay? So, what about animals shot with rifles? What do you do? Here's the question. What do the ulama say about the following situation? Someone recited Bismillah. This is another condition of the hunt. When you release the arrow, you're supposed to say Bismillahi Allahu Akbar. Just like when you slaughter an animal for consumption, At the time of slaughtering, what do you recite? Bismillahi Allahu Akbar. So he says someone followed this procedure with a gun. Okay? Someone recited Bismillah and fired his weapon at some hunting game. When he reached the animal, right? Because what happens is when you shoot the animal, you got to walk up to it now. You're shooting it from far away. So when he walked up, he found that it had no signs of life or movement. When he slaughtered the animal, he found the blood to flow copiously. So there was no signs of movement or anything in the animal, but when he slaughtered it, it was bleeding. That means the heart was pumping, ostensibly. So he says, would this game be considered halal to consume? Would it still be halal if it were not slaughtered? Would it still be halal if the blood did not flow upon slaughtering? بَيِّنُوا وَتُؤَجِّلُوا. Okay, so 4 questions here. What does Sayyidi Al-Azad say in response? He said, if the animal was slaughtered, and if it was established through its twitching or moving before or after slaughtering or anything of the sort at the time of slaughter, that the animal was alive, then regardless of the flow of blood and regardless of extra movement, the animal is halal to consume. So there has to be some kind of sign of life after shooting. If there's some kind of sign of life, maybe the eye is moving, maybe there's a blink, okay? Maybe there's a pulse, maybe there's a pulse, maybe some sort of pulsating. At the time of the slaughter, if there was any kind of sign of life, then it doesn't matter whether the blood flows well or not so well. The animal after slaughtering will be halal.
Rigor mortis count as a sign of life?
That's the complete opposite. That means the body's all stiff now because it's dead. That means that that's a sign of death, not a sign of life. If you reach the animal, it's already got rigor mortis, you're done. You can't eat that animal. It's a waste. Leave it for the wolves. Or if you're in India, leave it for the leopards. Okay? If the animal was left as it was after being shot, like we just said, or it was slaughtered, but there were no signs of life at the time of slaughter, then the animal is haram. Okay? Because you shot it with a bullet. So because you shot it with a bullet, if it dies instantly, you can't eat it. If there's no signs of life at the time of slaughter. It's not a guarantee, right? You can shoot something and it can stay alive. But if there's no sign of life at all, like absolutely you know, like, man, this thing is dead, then you haven't slaughtered it yet, then it's not going to be halal. Even if you try to slaughter it, then it's dead. There's no point in slaughtering it after that. Again, he's quoting from Durr al-Mukhtār. He says, ذبح شاة مريضة فتحركت أو خرج الدم حلت وإلا لا إن لم تدر حياته. He says if somebody slaughtered a sick goat and then it moved, or blood flowed from the out of the slaughtering area, حلت, then it's halal. وإلا, but if it didn't move or the blood did not flow, then no. إن لم تدر حياته, if the life of that animal could not be ascertained عند الذبح, at the time of slaughtering. The animal has to be alive when it's time for you to slaughter it. وَإِنْ عُلِمَ حَيَاتُهُ حَلَّتْ مُطْلَقًا. But if the life is if you know that it's alive, then the animal is halal. وَإِنْ لَمْ تَتَحَرَّكْ وَلَمْ تَخْرُجُ الدَّمُ. Okay, even if it didn't move or if blood didn't come out from the slaughtering. If you know it was alive, then regardless of how well the blood flowed or there was regardless of how much it moved or didn't move, but if you knew it was alive and you slaughtered, it's going to be halal, no issue. وهذا يتأتى في منخنقة ومتردية ونطيحة. These 3 words, munkhaniqa, mutaraddiya, natiha, these are mentioned in Quran Pak, in Surah Al-Ma'idah. Some of the people who will be listening to this later, they've been requesting tafsir al-Quran, which for whatever odd reason is just not something that we've been able to get around to. But the thing about fiqh is you just going to be something. It has to be. So we're going to see some of that here now, a little bit. So munkhaniqa is an animal that's been killed through strangulation. Mutaraddiya, that's an animal that died by falling off a high position. Natiha, that's an animal that's been killed with blunt force. Wallati faqara dhi'bu, and also the animal that a wolf ate from, or a wolf bit down on. So faqara dhi'bu batnaha, the wolf bit down on its stomach. Okay, so an animal that these things have happened to it, but it's not dead yet. فَذَكَاتُ هَذِهِ الْأَشْيَاء تُحَلِّلُ. Then the slaughtering, zakat is slaughtering. The slaughtering of these animals in these situations will render those animals halal. So if an animal has been hit with blunt force, but it's not dead yet. So if there's an animal, for example, that's been strangled, but it's not dead yet. If there's an animal that fell from like a cliff, but it's not dead yet. If there's an animal that's been hit with blunt force or gored with another animal's horns, but it's not dead yet. If there's an animal that's been attacked by like a predatory beast, but it's not dead yet. In those situations, if you slaughter them, then those animals will become halal. This is a very important issue because not everybody's understanding that we need to slaughter the animal in order for it to be halal, right? You can't kill it in any of these other ways. And on a side note, this is how the majority of the farms in America, good old America, this is how the majority of them kill their beasts. With the cows, for example, there's a specific little compression tool that they use where they shoot a compressed air rod into the animal and bring it out into the head. So that's how they kill it. Or they'll stun the animal, electrocute it to death. All of these ways, those animals are haram. They're not slaughtered animals. You cannot eat things that have been consumed this way. A lot of, let's not beat around the bush, a lot of idiots, they say that eating things that are like, you know, in American restaurants or American stores, if it's an animal that's consumable, then this is the meat of Ahlul Kitab, and the meat of Ahlul Kitab is halal. No, the slaughtered meat of Ahlul Kitab is halal, not the random electrocuted products, not animals that have been killed in inhumane ways like this. And a lot of people will say, well, slaughtering is not humane. Yeah, it's humane. I remember there was I just happened to a chance upon, so in India, this is like a little bit of a little tiff that Sikh people have with Muslims. That Sikh people, they don't believe in dhibh, right? So for us, the dhibh is what? You got to cut four vessels. What do you have to cut? You have to cut the trachea, you have to cut the esophagus, you have to cut the jugular vein, and you have to cut the carotid artery. You have to cut all four of these veins. If you cut all four of these veins, then that's a valid slaughter. And of course, you have to take the name of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala.
70% of it, basically.
Yeah, basically, you have to cut 70% of the neck and you have to let the animal bleed out. So, Sikh people say, no, this is inhumane. You're letting the animal bleed out. You're letting the animal bleed out. That's like they use this word. They say it's berahmi. I was like, dude, these are Arabic words. You're saying berahmi. I was like, don't steal our words if you're gonna go against our hukum. So they do something called jhatka, where they cut the animal from the back and they cut the spinal cord because they say there's no pain that's there for the animal then. Listen, if you want the animal to die a painless death, don't don't even think about the animal. Let's say the animal dies of natural causes. You just let it live out its life. You think the animal's not going to be in pain? What kind of death doesn't have pain? There's always going to be some pain associated with death,
Mhm.
where people say, "Oh, well, he didn't suffer." How do you know he didn't suffer?
Mhm.
There's a lot of suffering that happens with death. Some cases more than others. There is no way you can guarantee a quote unquote painless death just because you cut something's spinal cord,
Mhm.
right?
Which requires that you cut its skin and a bunch of other stuff
Yeah, it's gonna
beforehand.
feel pain before you cut the spinal cord. No, they say like, you just do one clean cut and the animal's not gonna feel anything.
Mhm.
Okay, well, if you chop off any part of your body with like, um, quickly, you are gonna feel pain at that thing. You are
Mhm.
gonna feel pain at you just so there they say, well, they feel pain at the first instance, but they don't feel pain after because you've severed the head. But the body itself has pain receptors.
Mhm.
Just because your brain doesn't receive the signals doesn't mean it doesn't
And the
feel those
brain's
things.
still active even though it's
And the
cut.
brain is still active. Why? And the muscles are still active. So many times where people cut off the heads of chickens and the chickens are still running. The nerves and everything is still active. This is like this is jahalat. People
Mhm.
don't know. You know, if you look at the way, for example, a completely different thing, you look at the way that lions kill their prey, or most big cats except jaguars. Okay, so they kill the animals by suffocation. They'll grab the throat and crush the windpipe, or um, they'll completely cover up the nose and the mouth so that they can't breathe. So the animal literally chokes to death. Okay, so that's a slow death, right? Slow. Hyenas, what do? They kill by disemboweling. So they'll attack the stomach, like it says here, and then they'll rip out the guts. And once the guts are all ripped out, the animal dies. So the choking, this is a slow death. And the disembowelment, this is a quick death. But both of them involve some kind of pain. Jaguars, the way jaguars kill their prey is because they've got slightly larger jaws than the rest of the cats and the slightly bigger mouths. So they don't kill by choking. They grab the head and they crack the skull. All of it involves pain. All of it involves some kind of pain. The question is not, can you give a painless death? The question is, can you render this meat pure to eat? The only way to do that is by letting the blood flow naturally. This is the point of dhibh, okay? But going back to the original point, if the animal is sick or the animal is um, uh, having signs of life and you slaughter it, then even if the blood doesn't flow copiously, it's still bleeding out according to the strength of the animal. So that is sufficient. Same thing if the animal was just about to die because it fell off a cliff. Well, you slaughtered it, it becomes halal.
You said sick as well, right?
Mhm.
I thought that was one of the types that you couldn't do ziba on, like a sick animal. Hmm.
Well, that's what it says here.
Mhm.
ولو ذهب شاة مريضة فتحركت أو خرج الدم حلت. If it moves and blood comes out, it's halal.
Mhm.
And if it doesn't move or if blood doesn't come out, then if you can't ascertain whether the animal was halal at the time of was alive at the time of slaughtering, it's not going to be halal. But if you do know that the animal is alive, then yes, it's still going to be halal to consume. Same thing for all these other animals. Okay? So it says, وَإِن كَانَتْ حَيَاتُهَا خَفِيفَةً, even if the life is very weak at that point. وَعَلَيْهِ الْفَتْوَى. Okay? And then he gives this thing, and then he gives this ayat from Surah Al-Ma'idah, إِلَّا مَا ذَكَّيْتُمْ, mentioning the things that you're not supposed to do, like not the animals that you're supposed to eat. And then he says, إِلَّا مَا ذَكَّيْتُمْ, except for what you slaughter, the hunting animals, right? Min ghairi fasl. And he mentioned this without any kind of break. So because it says إِلَّا مَا ذَكَّيْتُمْ for the hunting animals. Don't eat these animals that you hunted. إِلَّا مَا ذَكَّيْتُمْ except what you slaughtered. And then when you slaughter the animal at the time of life, it is halal. Okay? في رد المحتار. Now رد المحتار is explaining something. And he's explaining something from a very important book called Fatawa Bazzaziyah, which is quoting from um, Imam Isbijabi, who authored a sharh on Mukhtasar al-Tahawi, which is a fiqh book by Imam Tahawi. And so you know Imam Tahawi used to be Shafi'i and then he became Hanafi. So he authored uh, proper work in the Hanafi madhab as well. So he says, خروج الدم لا يدل على الحياة. The exiting of blood does not necessarily indicate to the life of the animal. إلا إذا كان يخرج كما يخرج من الحي. Unless the blood is exiting from the body just like it would have exited from a real living animal. عند الإمام. This is according to Imam Abu Hanifa. وهو ظاهر الرواية. And this is the apparent narration from him. And you know, one of the rules of the reliability of the positions of the Hanafi madhab is that if it goes back to something that Imam Abu Hanifa said in the Zahiru Riwayah and the apparent narrations, then that is the reliable position. وفي سيد الدر, again Durr Mukhtar is talking, والمعتبر في المتردية وأخواتها كنتيحة وموقوذة وما أكل السبع والمريضة مطلق الحياة. He says the important thing to remember about mutaraddiya, okay, and all of its sisters, means all the other situations of the animals, like natiha and mawqūdhah. Mawqūdhah is something that's been gored with horns. Wama akala sab'u, and something that like animals like attacked, predatory animals attacked and ate from a little bit. He says, and also a sick animal. It's mutlaqul haya. The thing that needs to be considered here is just the life itself. Okay? Wa in qallat, even if the life is very weak or very little. Okay? Kama ashadna ilayhi, just like we have indicated to before. Wa alayhi al-fatwa, and this is what the fatwa position is. So, suffice it to say, you reach the animal, it's still alive in any way, shape, form, you slaughter it, it is halal. Yes. Okay, now he's quoting from the book called Madarikut Tanzil wa Haqa'iqut Ta'wil. This is popularly known as Tafsir Nasafi, because this is Imam Nasafi's tafsir. A very, very important tafsir for us to study. He says, وَالْمَوْقُوذَةُ. This is from Surah Al-Ma'idah. Okay, he says, what is mawqūdhah? التي أثخنوها ضربا بعصا أو حجر حتى ماتت. So mawqūdhah, I said before, mawqūdhah is something that's been gored by horns. No, natiha is something that's gored by horns. Mawqūdhah is something that they say it's been pierced or it's been athkhana. Athkhana yuthinu is to wear something down, is to literally beat down and wear down. So something that you've worn or beaten down with strikes from a staff or a stone until it dies. So something literally that you beat to death. This is mawqūdhah. وفي معالم التنزيل. معالم التنزيل. This is another tafsir work. It's popularly known as Tafsir Baghawi because it's written by Imam Muhyi Sunnah al-Baghawi rahimahullah ta'ala. And this is another very, very important tafsir. This is one of the Ummahatut Tafasir. Ummahatut Tafasir are those tafsir books that are pretty much the basis for all the other tafsir books that were written after. Those are the books that we want to have recourse to have our basic, intermediate, and even advanced understandings of the ayat of the Quran. So, Imam Baghawi, his tafsir is known for bringing out certain meanings and also for bringing out certain reliable narrations and also certain well-known stories, surrounding the ayat of the Quran. So he says, Qala Qatada. He's quoting from Hazrat Qatada, who is one of the students of Sayyidina Abdullah ibn Abbas radiallahu ta'ala anhuma. Okay, and Sayyidina Abdullah ibn Abbas was considered one of the foremost, if not the foremost, authority amongst the Sahaba of tafsir of the Quran. He says, كانوا يضربونها بالعصا فإذا ماتت أكلوها. So what he's also explaining Mawqūdhah. He's saying that the people in previous times, they used to beat the animal with a staff, and then when it died, they would eat it. This is obviously haram. But this is explaining Mawqūdhah. Mawqūdhah is something that's been listed as haram in Surah Al-Ma'idah. قلت. This is what Sayyidi Ala Hazrat is saying now. Sayyidi Ala Hazrat is saying this. He says, فَظَهَرَ أَنَّ مَضْرُوبَ كُلِّ مُثَقَّلٍ كَالْبُنْدُقَةِ وَلَوْ بُنْدُقَةِ الرِّصَاصِ كُلَّهُ مِنَ الْمَوْقُوذَةِ. So why is he talking about animals that were beaten to death? Because he says it's apparent here, because it's like you're using staffs, you're using stones, you're using some kind of blunt object to beat the animal to death. So he says it's apparent here that something that is struck with a heavy blunt object, like a gun, even like a gun, like using bullets. Okay, bunduka is actually like a slingshot, a sling, and then bunduka rasas, this is like the actual firearm. Okay, he says all of these things that are like, firearms and stuff like that, animals killed by any of these things will be considered from the mawqūdhah. فَيَحِلُّ بِالذَّكَاةِ وَإِنْ قَلَّتِ الْحَيَاةِ. So these things will be made halal or become halal with slaughtering, even if the life is not remaining much. But if the life is still there, then slaughter. So what is he saying? This is an important point. He's saying that animals killed by bullets are the same as animals that are killed by blunt force objects. This is important because it's not the same as hitting something with an arrowhead or something sharp. You can say, well, but back in the early 20th century, they used musket balls. No, musket balls were from the 18th century. Afterwards, they started using more aerodynamic bullets. But even the tip of the bullet is not something sharp. If you look at an arrow tip, if you poke yourself with an arrow tip, it'll cut you. If you poke yourself with a bullet tip, it's not going to poke you. It's actually blunt. So the bullets that are used to hit the object, they're blunt objects. So it is going to be considered mawqūdhah. So if you hit an animal with a bullet, and if there's still life left, it will be considered mawqūdhah. But if there's life left, then even that mawqūdhah can be made halal if you slaughter it, because it's not dead yet. Once it's dead, game over, literally, for the animal and for you if you're trying to eat. So I remember someone told me that they went deer hunting once, and they shot at the head of the deer, and what happened was they hit one of the antlers. The bullet shattered the antler of the deer. So there was a huge shock to the system. So the animal became completely stunned. So he had his chance and he slaughtered when he approached. It was like a completely legitimate kill for consumption. Okay, and then he's explaining this. في رد المحتار. Now he's giving the final thing that we need to know about bullets. ولا يخفى أن الجرح بالرصاص إنما هو بالإحراق والثقل بواسطة اندفاعه العنيف. Okay. He says it's not at all hard to understand that the wound with a bullet is only being inflicted through ihraq, through burning, and through thiql. Thiql is like weight. Literally means weight, but here you can say pressure. Okay? بواسطة اندفاعه العنيف, by means of the forceful movement of that bullet. So the force of the bullet is applying pressure, and the heat of the bullet is also burning. So through this burning and this pressure, this is where the wound is coming from. It's not coming from sharpness. It's coming from force, pressure, and heat. إِذْ لَيْسَ لَهُ حَدٌّ فَلَا يَحِلُّ, because it doesn't have an edge. It doesn't have a sharp point. So فَلَا يَحِلُّ. So it's not permissible. It's not halal. وَبِهِ أَفْتَى ibn Nujaym. And this is what Allama Zayn ibn Nujaym, Imam Zayn ibn Nujaym is also one of the great fuqaha, the research fuqaha. And he was probably considered the most reliable authority in the madhab of the latter era ulama before Ibn Abidin Shami. So he says this is what Imam Zayn ibn Nujaym also gave his fatwa on. So the bottom line is a very important point. If you shoot an animal with a gun and the animal dies, you can't eat it. Now, if it's alive and you slaughter it, then this becomes halal. So now the question is, should we even go hunting with rifles? That's the question. So in Texas, especially in deer season, a lot of people just go bow hunting. So if you're going out for catching deer meat, that's what you want to do. But, I was just told the other day that the native deer to Texas, the white-tailed deer, the meat is not very good on them. Actually, the meat of like cheetal deer, axis deer, those are the deer that are native to India. That meat's supposed to be very good, which is true. People who go to that side of the world, sometimes they'll make you like venison kebabs and stuff like that. Tastes very similar to beef.
That's interesting.
But what they did in Texas is they released a bunch of axis deer in the wild here. So they're thriving in the wild. There's a huge axis deer population now. And there's also nilgai, which is another variety of deer. It's also supposed to be very good meat. They released all these in Texas.
The meat over here, the natural population is like very gamey.
Yeah, the spotted deer population, very gamey. The white-tailed spotted deer, yeah. So not the spotted deer, the white-tailed deer. The white-tailed deer here, the meat's very gamey. It's not something that is desirable. Wallahu ta'ala a'lamu bis-sawab.
I've got a question actually.
Yes.
So let's say the hunter, he did not say Bismillah Allahu Akbar, but then at the time of slaughtering, it showed signs of being alive. So it's halal, right?
Yeah.
Okay.
If he slaughtered it in the right way, it's still halal, even if he didn't say Bismillah when he fired the bullet. So now this brings us to the next issue, hunting for sport. We're talking about the implications of consuming the animal that's hunted. What about hunting itself? This is the question. What do the ulama say about going hunting every day for sport, entertainment, or as a hobby? According to the law, shara', to what extent is hunting in this way allowed, and at what times? Is a person who engages in hunting like this every day sinful or not? بَيِّنُوا مُفَصِّلًا تُؤَجِّرُوا كَثِيرًا. Little addition to that dua that they make. Okay, he says, give clarity in detail and get reward abundantly. So what's the answer? Hunting for sport or entertainment is understood to be playing a game. This is why they call it hunting game, right? The animal that you're targeting is called game. This activity, whether it be rifle hunting or fishing, whether it be every day or occasionally, it is all unanimously considered haram without exception.
Fishing as well.
Fishing for sport. Fishing for sport, hunting for sport, going out there and doing these things for fun, it's all considered haram.
If you were to fish for game, right, and let's say, for example, you eat that fish later for whatever reason, instead of just, like, oh, I'm hungry, let me eat this fish that I caught for sport, right? Would that fish be considered haram then?
The fish would not be considered haram,
Okay, okay. The action of doing
but the
it.
action of doing it is considered haram. Let's see what else he has to say. Hunting is only halal when done for food, medicine, some other benefit, or the removal of harm. So food is obvious. Medicine, there are a lot of animals that have medicinal, their bodies, the parts of their bodies have medicinal properties. And I'm talking about real medicine, not like how people in certain Far Eastern countries they poach tigers because they want like extra power in the no-no areas. This is like nonsense and is ridiculous. That's like superstitious. But sometimes animals have real benefits. Like there's some other benefit.
Like
One of the
sinew.
right,
The deer sinew.
like deer sinew. This has benefits. Um, when people used to hunt, when the indigenous people used to hunt buffalo, what did they do? They used it for like everything, right? They used the sinew to like tie up their tents. They used the bones for different materials. Like they knew what to do with the animal. It had legitimate uses. In addition to the food. Other benefits, like that there are well, this is like a this is like a not a good thing, but sometimes there's ivory. You should not kill excessively for ivory either. But sometimes there's like and for certain there's musk deer that if you pull out the glands, that's where musk is produced. So you get musk. We call it in Urdu kasturi. We call it misk in Arabic, right? That's a fragrance that has a benefit. So there are certain benefits that you get from hunting certain animals, and you hunt these things in moderation, of course, for these benefits as they are needed. Okay? Or the removal of harm. For example, there's a man-eating leopard or a man-eating tiger that's terrorizing the village. You got to go and take care of this thing.
There's one animal in Texas in particular. Maybe it's this United States as a whole. It's I think a warthog or something. They just stick the
It's a
oil in.
big problem all over the Western United States. Feral hogs, big problem. And so Texas has done everything to encourage hunting them. Unfortunately, the way that we're hunting them, it's not doing anything to cull the numbers because they reproduce so quickly. It's a big problem here. They're trying to think of different ways to sort of give them some sort of sterilization or something like that, feed them something in the wild that will sterilize them, chemical castration, things like that. But so far, no attempts are working. And it is a very big problem in a lot of places. And they're not hunting them effectively enough. I remember in the Galapagos Islands, a lot of the farmers had introduced goats, but the goats were consuming everything so voraciously, the the Galapagos tortoises, they weren't able to get food. So to save the tortoises, they had to cull the goat population. So they just basically took a helicopter, they flew all over all the islands, and then they just pop, shot them all down. So hogs are a different problem because they're not livestock like goats. Goats are just walking around.
And they can camouflage easily too.
These hogs, they burrow. They have hiding places. They come out, they camouflage. You have to work very hard to hunt them. But yes, hunting them to cull the population, remove the thing, this is something it would be permissible to do. And this is also something we believe, right? One of the things that Hazrat Isa alayhi salam will do when he comes back is he will exterminate the population of these hogs all over the world, right?
We can even hunt like animals who are like destroying like fruit plantations, example like monkeys. Let's say there's like a fruit plantation, like bananas and stuff. So a
Mhm.
lot of monkeys will like spoil the plantations. So like, can we kill them? Can we hunt them down?
If they're causing such a problem that they're harming a person's crops or property or something like that, yeah, that's removal of harm. You can exterminate them, yes. So hunting for these purposes is allowed. Now, Sayyidi Allah Hazrat adds a little bit of a point. So remember, this was like the early 20th century. Early 20th century, if you recall, well, you can't recall physically, but if you recall from your reading of history, this is when hunting was at an all-time high. Why? Because of certain skinned people ruling a big portion of colonies all over the world and thinking that the world is their plaything. going around everywhere and doing excessive hunting. The cheetah population in India, all extinct. Tiger population in India, on the brink of extinction. Lion population outside of Africa, pretty much extinct. All because of excessive hunting with modern weaponry. And what did they do? They're hunting it to do what? They're hunting all these animals, tigers, lions, giraffes, rhinoceros. What are they doing? Just to chop the heads off, put them on the wall, or to stuff them, right? So Sayyidi Al-Hazrat has a few words for these types of people. He said, the high-profile hunters of today, who are so proud that they deem going to the market to secure their provisions to be a lapse in their honor, who are so soft and feeble that they consider going out in the heat for a few minutes to pray in the masjid to be an insurmountable task. These people have no problem leaving their homes for days at a time, tolerating the midday heat of the jungle or the desert for days on end to hunt some game. So do these people undertake this endeavor for food? Something to think about. One can recognize their true intent if one suggests to them to go buy fish from the market, or if one offers them fish from one's own home. They won't accept it. They'll be like, no, I don't need to go. What are you talking about? I don't need to go get fish. No, 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 that's okay. You can keep it. And then the next day they'll be like, hey, I'm going fishing. It's like, yeah, you're going for fun, my guy. After a hunt, they will often distribute the meat to others, keeping none for themselves. Thus, we can deduce that their activities are the same impermissible act. Very important to realize. Not so he's not just talking about, the colonizers. He's talking about everybody. Anybody who goes out and does some kind of hunting. Basically, what is he suggesting? If you're going out to do this stuff, when you have access to the same materials in the markets or something like that, then what are you going out there for? Now you could say, well, which is the case now. Well, I don't trust the meat at the stores, or I don't trust the fish. I want to catch my own fish because I don't trust that they'll treat it with chemicals and stuff. This would actually render the thing permissible, right? Because you're actually going because you want a fresh, proper source of food that you can trust. That would actually make it permissible. So a lot of people from our community, they'll go to like South Padre Island and these places and those places. They'll go fishing because they're like, well, I prefer something caught wild. Never mind that the waters in this particular corner of the Atlantic Ocean are, how can we say, less than the cleanest because of the petrochemical industry, but to a reasonable extent, you can find good wild catch fish here, okay, of different varieties. So you can see from this, if you're just catching a bunch of fish or hunting a bunch of things, you're just giving everybody else the meat away, you're not hunting for food, man. Obviously, you're doing it just for the fun of it. Okay. In Tanweer al-Absar and Durr al-Mukhtār, he's talking about hunting here. It says, Huwa mubahun. Hunting, it is mubah, permissible. Illa littalahi, kama huwa zahir. Except for fun, which is obvious. Okay? كما أفاده في الأشباه والبزازية ومجمع الفتاوى وغنية ذوي الأحكام والتاترخانية ورد المحتار وغيرها عامة الأسفار. Just like it's been specified in the book of Al-Ashbah wal-Nadha'ir, in the book Fatawa Bazaziyah, in the book Majma' al-Fatawa, in the book Ghunyatu Dhawil Ahkam, in the book Fatawa Tatarkhaniya, in Radd al-Muḥtār, and many, many, many other books of the madhab. Pretty much every book that you can think of in the madhab, if you go to the section on hunting, they will all say, yes, hunting is permissible, except if you do it for fun. Okay? Wallahu ta'ala a'lamu bis-sawab. Something important to remember. You can't be going out there to hunt for fun. Now, a lot of people go deer hunting, but that can actually be legitimate because most people that we know in our community, they go deer hunting. They're not going to mount the head on the wall. They're going because they want deer meat. Deer meat's not something that's available in the markets very easily. In that case, that's permissible. But if you're just going out for the fun of it, no, it is not. And that's important because it's an important thing for us to recognize. Because Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has told us that life is sacrosanct. You can't just be going out there ending things just because you feel like it. That's not something that we're allowed to do in Islam. You can't just go out there and hunt willy-nilly. This is why, when hunting for sport became a thing, it's not Muslim people that made all of these species of animals extinct. It's not Muslim people that pushed buffalo in America, bison to the brink of extinction. There used to be as far down as here, there used to be just herds and herds of them. They're all gone now because of excessive hunting for the fun of it. So this is not something that that Islam ever says that this is permissible. No. You're supposed to preserve these things and take care of them. Okay, switching gears again. Drinking from copper vessels. This seems like a pretty standard issue, but the questioner, the person who's asking this question to Sayyidi Al-Hazrat, he actually read something in a particular poem to learn the Hanafi madhab that doing wudu from a copper vessel is the wudu will have some kind of deficiency in it. So what's this about? Let's see. This is the question. What do the ulama say about eating, drinking, and making wudu from copper vessels? Some of the primary teaching tools of jurisprudence seem to suggest that making wudu from a copper vessel entails some deficiency. Well, what's the answer? Making wudu, eating, and drinking from copper vessels is allowed without any issue. There will be no deficiency in making wudu from them. So in case that was not clear already, it should be clear now. Okay. But the vessels should be gilded or galvanized with tin or lead or some other metal or alloy. It shouldn't just be straight copper. You should galvanize it or gild it with another metal. It is makruh to eat from that, but obviously not gold or silver, because it's haram to eat from something that's gold or silver. It's haram to drink from something that's gold and silver. It's haram to use gold and silver. It's makruh to use gold and silver for vessels to make wudu also. Okay, so any other metal, it should be galvanized. Why? It is makruh to eat from vessels that haven't been gilded or galvanized because of the bodily harm that it entails. So what does he mean by this? He's going to quote from some books now. But before he does that, he's going to give you the basic point again. Using earthenware vessels for wudu is superior to using copper. The ulama listed as one of the recommended acts of wudu is to use, they list one of the recommended acts of wudu to use earthenware pots. And it's actually considered a humbler practice. Okay? Why? We're going to see. He's quoting Radd al-Muḥtār. فَمِنْهَا كَمَا فِي الْفَتْحِ كَوْنُ آنِيَتِهِ مِنْ خَزَفٍ. He says one of the recommended acts of wudu, as has been stated in the very famous Hanafi book Fathul Qadir. Fathul Qadir is a shara of Hidayah, and Hidayah is one of the foundational advanced books of the madhab. Okay? It's an advanced book, but it's also foundational. Okay, so the commentary on this book says, كَوْنُ آنِيَتِهِ مِنْ خَزَفٍ. One of the recommended acts of wudu is for the vessel with the which is holding the wudu water to be made of clay. Okay? وَفِيهِ, again, Radd al-Muḥtār says in another place, وَالَّذِي رَأَيْتُهُ فِي الْإِخْتِيَارِ. So Allama Ibn Abidin Shabi is saying, I read in this book, Al-Ikhtiyar لِتَعْلِيلِ الْمُخْتَار. This is a commentary on one of the mutun of the madhab, one of the very basic books of the madhab. It says, وَإِتِّخَاذُهَا مِنَ الْخَزَفِ أَفْضَلِ. He says, taking the wudu water pot to be from clay. Okay, this is superior. Because la sarfa fihi wala makhyala or makhila. Because there is no extravagance in this, nor is there any haughtiness or any pompousness or any arrogance. Like people can take like fancy jugs and jars and say, "Wow, wow, look, this is what I got." So there can be, not always, but there can be a little bit of extravagance, or there can be a little bit of arrogance in this. So he says, وَفِي الْحَدِيثِ Rasul Akram sallallahu alayhi wasallam said this: "Man ittakhadha awaniya baytihi khazafan zarathu al-malaika." Whoever takes the vessels of his house to be earthenware, whoever ensures that the vessels in his house are clay vessels, the angels will visit him. So there is a fazilat of having earthenware pots for your cooking, or not really for cooking, but for storing water and making wudu as well. And earthenware pots actually, like, before, back in the day, before we had like, refrigeration and stuff, these things are what kept the water cool, right? Water, especially that you drew from the ground, it was cold naturally. And then keeping it in the clay pots, it actually maintained the coolness. And he says, وَيَجُوزُ اتِّخَاذُهَا min nuhasin or rasas. But you can also to keep the vessels of the home from copper or lead. This is also permissible. But this is before they knew about lead poisoning, by the way. But even then, because he said it needs to be galvanized, because the lead can, the little bits of lead that get in your system, this is what kills you. If you galvanize the lead pots with some other metal, it's not going to happen. It's not going to rust. It's not going to break up, which is what he's going to say in a minute. He says, في الدر المختار ويكره الأكل في نحاس. Durr al-Mukhtār, Imam Haskafi wrote this. He said, eating from a straight copper vessel is makruh. Why? Well, he explains in Durr and Radd al-Muḥtār. قيد النحاس بالغير المطلي or غير المطلي بالرصاص. He says he specified that kind of copper which is not gilded with lead, or by extension any other metal. لأنه يدخل الصدأ في الطعام, because without galvanization the copper is going to rust, and the rust particles are going to mix into the food. فَيُورِثُ ضَرَرًا, so that will lead to ضَرَرِ عَظِيم. This will lead to severe harm, right? You'll have copper poisoning. You'll have lead poisoning. وَأَمَّا بَعْدَهُ فَلَا. As for after galvanization, it's not makruh at all. So you can also even make a case for what? Teflon, PFAS, all this other stuff, right? Because that is also entailing severe bodily harm. Forever chemicals and stuff like that. Unfortunately,
Teflon, these things usually just kind of scrape it off almost.
no, but the thing is that the harm is harder to prove, because these things are causing such long-term damages, and because we're not able to directly show you like this is where the damage is. It's not so apparent for the people, so it's hard to make like a case, like a general case to say that these things are there.
It's like, because this thing's like literally like spread amongst all of humanity at this point, right? There's no control group that you can see like, oh, okay, this is where the harm is actually.
Exactly. So it's hard to see that. But if that were easy to see, it would be like makruh to eat from like, Teflon or something like that as well. Wallahu ta'ala a'lamu bis-sawab. And switching gears again, venerating random areas or parts of a landscape. This is the question. What do the ulama say about the following issue? Some people say that in such and such tree or such and such niche, there resides a martyr. Every Thursday, they place food or sweets of Fatiha on those trees or niches and hang garlands there and apply frankincense. They pray for fulfillment of desires there. This is the common practice in many areas of the city. This is what the person who's writing to say the Allah in that time is saying. Do martyrs reside in trees and niches? Are the people who engage in these practices correct or not? This is the answer. This is all baseless superstition and ignorant, invalid stupidity. It is necessary to put an end to such practices.
Yeah.
And why is it baseless? How do you know that something is in a tree? How do you know that something is in a ditch? And he quotes this ayat of the Quran that's in Surah Najm, and Surah Yusuf. Ma anzalallahu biha min sultan. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala did not reveal any kind of knowledge or authority for you to know this or judge this. Okay? Wala hawla wala quwwata illa billahi al-aliyyil azim. And there is no power or strength except with Allah. So, this is all superstition. Oh, there's a shaheed that lives in this tree. Did you know that? Like, how? No, I didn't. How do you know? Why would the shaheed be in a tree? Oh, this is a karamat. Like, where? Where is the sanad for this? It's not okay for you to just say something random. There has to be a sanad for what you're saying. There has to be somebody who saw it that's reliable, and then that thing that is being narrated. If that doesn't exist, then it's not true.
The situation that the question describing sounds about like Hindu practices, basically.
This is where a lot of this stuff comes from, unfortunately. And it's not fair to just say that this is just what Hindus do. This is what pretty much everybody human does.
Superstitions.
Superstitions abound, and Islam came to remove superstitions, not uphold them. Huzur Akram sallallahu alaihi wasallam has always said, people used to think that it was like a bad omen for an owl to come at your house. He said there's no such thing as an owl coming to your house being a bad omen. People used to think the month of Safar, people still believe this, Oh, Safar ke mahine mein balayein utarti hain. Nonsense. How can people say this when Huzur Akram sallallahu alaihi wasallam said, La safar wala bala. Aw kama qala sallallahu alaihi wasallam. He said, there is no bala in the month of Safar. There is no ominous thing in the month of Safar. There are clear hadith that have become against this thing.
There's a solar eclipse as well.
Yeah, people say, this is something bad. It's not bad. It's a sign of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. That's why we don't go out and enjoy the eclipse either. This is the time where we understand this to mean a severe sign of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And so what happens when there's a severe sign of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala? This is when you devote yourself to worship, devote yourself to remembrance of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. That's what you're supposed to be doing in these moments. So it's very important to put things in their place and to know that these are all superstitions. There's some people who go extreme and say, oh, well, this mazar of this wali, it's not really a mazar. Like, calm down, guy. There's plenty of people who know that this is a person of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. This person is buried here. There's a biography. Now, if there's nothing like that, then you can say, well, maybe. But this thing is just completely baseless. Let's go to this tree and hang garlands and do this. And this is all really baseless. These are things that need to be cut off, especially if the population doing these things is Muslim. As Muslims, you must cease, desist, and put a stop to this.
You remember what I showed you, Shalwar Sarkar, right? Basically, it's Pakistan somewhere. It's like a tree. And the whole thing is that, to get the blessings of Sarkar Sahab, not Sarkar, Shalwar Sahab, and you have to basically take your clothes off and hang it on the tree. And you can't bring an extra pair.
What?
It's
ridiculous.
I'll show it to you later.
Now, and
That's what it was.
in South India, there's a place called Dada Pahar. It's in there's this mountain that you can drive up, and there's purportedly some mazarat in a cave at the top of the mountain. There's also supposed to be like a chillagah of a wali that's there, and there's this is a little different. It's not like a superstitious thing. Nobody hangs garlands there, but what do people do? It's kind of going overboard a little bit. But what they say is that there's this waterfall, but it's not coming from a river. It's like groundwater. But the interesting thing about this waterfall is that the survey specialists are trying to trace the source of the groundwater from which this waterfall is springing. They can't find the source. Now, this can be one of the signs of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, right? Now, a lot of people go there and bathe in the waterfall. Nothing wrong with bathing in the waterfall, as long as you cover yourself sufficiently, right? Ain't nothing wrong. And as long as there's separation of the genders and, you're not having any, so there's none of that nonsense, right? People are covered when they go. They make wudu. Some people bathe, but they bathe covered. And the ladies don't mix with the men at all. What other people start to do is they start to think, well, if you go there, then all your black magic stuff will be cleansed. Allahu a'lam. But you can go there with a good intention to say, like, I'll visit and explore one of the signs of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Right? It's not something completely baseless. It's actually a wondrous thing. These places, yeah, it's permissible to visit, because it's permissible to visit anything that's a sign of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. It's a clear sign. Just like it's permissible, it's also recommended to go and visit Mount Fuji, because it's one of the beautiful creations of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, right? But don't nobody go there because you might become immortal. That's clearly a baseless superstition, right? So there needs to be a distinction. And this is just completely baseless. So we ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to save us from ignorance and from doing those things that our Messenger sallallahu alaihi wasallam would not approve of. And we ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to keep us in His rada and in the obedience of Him and His Messenger. Allahumma salli wa sallam wa barik ala Sayyidina Muhammad wa ala alihi wa sahbihi ajma'in. We'll talk about the next masail in our next class. Insha'Allahu tabaraka wa ta'ala.